Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. People in the Northwest Territories are mourning the loss of a leader today. Edward Sangris is the former chief of Deda. He died this morning after a battle with cancer. Sangris served as chief for 16 years, and as Natalie Pressman reports, he leaves behind a long legacy.
Grace, thoughtfulness, and relentless dedication to his people. That's how Ed Sangris is being remembered.
He taught me, he says, always think things through before you react, before you do stuff, always think things through.
Sangris was an advocate for language rights, a dedicated negotiator, a husband, a father, a brother.
And he was a friend. He was a good friend.
Bjornson and Bitsina say that when it comes to his people, Sangris was always focused on the task at hand. But in his personal life, he was known for his humor.
He's witty. He's got his charming self.
And his sister, Mary Rose Maxagak, says he gets that from his people.
I think it comes from all the Dene people. We always joke and make people feel comfortable, breaking the ice sort of thing with our humor.
Maxagak says he takes after their late father. He served as chief for 32 years. It's still too soon for details on the funeral, but more information on that will be coming in the next days. Natalie Pressman, CBC News, Yellowknife.
A fatal car crash early Sunday morning has claimed the life of a Dawson City woman. The driver has been charged, and community members are preparing to pay tribute to the victim. Chris McIntyre has more.
The crash happened here in the driveway of Moose Mountain. 2 people were in the car. They were leaving a late-night party when they ran into a large steel gate. Salmon Root Bisla of Dawson City was the passenger. She died in the crash. She has been identified in court documents, and police tell CBC her family has been notified. Bisla spent years in Dawson working as bartender and later became a placer miner. Her friend John Wilkie says he's never had a friend quite like her.
She was just a doll. She was a gem. That's how I would say it. There was no one who met her who didn't love her, like right away.
Eric Raguth was the driver of the vehicle. He's been charged with impaired operation of a motor vehicle causing death and refusing to provide breath samples. He's been released on bail on 2 conditions. He must reside in his home in Dawson City and must report to a bail supervisor. He is scheduled to appear in court on December 12th. Friends of Bisla have already organized the gathering and fire for Thursday to be here on Front Street by the Farmers Market to honor the life of Bisla and the impact that she had on the Dawson community. Chris McIntyre, CBC News, Dawson City.
Recent test results have validated a Nunavut hunter's concerns about the health of some caribou they harvested earlier this year. Nunavut's environment minister says a number of caribou harvested in the Kivadluk have tested positive for parasites. Samples were sent for testing after hunters raised concerns earlier this year about caribou that appeared to be diseased. Daniel Kavik described the number of samples that contained parasites as above average.
Rankin Inlet hunter reported harvesting of 4 deceased caribou near Chesterfield Inlet. The 4 caribou within a group of 9 were reported to have been in poor condition.
Kavik was also questioned by Arviat South MLA Joseph Ikatak on how many samples were brought in and sent for testing, but the minister said he didn't have that information. Kavik did say further testing will be done to confirm the type of parasite. Caribou samples from the Kitikmeot have also been sent for the same tests. A second post office location opened in Iqaluit yesterday, and some residents are already feeling the first growing pains with the change. The new location adds more P.O. boxes for Iqaluit. It means there is a box for every civic address in the city. But Philip Marsh, who has both a personal and business P.O. box, says he lost his business box, which he had for decades. He said others have been running into similar issues. One of his neighbors told him they didn't meet the criteria for renewal because they sublease. Under the new system, boxes are only accessible to the primary owner or leaseholder of an address. Marsh, who walks with crutches, is also unhappy with the new location's accessibility.
I looked around, I didn't see anything. And there appears to be a handicap parking over near that food store, and I won't try to pronounce the name of that food store, but he said that there was an assigned handicap parking spot over there. I said, well, that's not possible. That's like all the way around that giant building.
Canada Post says every civic address recognized by the city of Iqaluit is eligible for a box, but in some cases, units or building numbers may not have appeared in Canada Post's dataset. The city of Iqaluit says it's working on updating Canada Post's address database to include any addresses or units which may have been missed. With the Northwest Territories territorial election now exactly 2 weeks away, we're bringing out all the election coverage you need to help make your decision. Yesterday, Luke Carroll told us about some ridings to watch, and today we have part 2 in that series.
Nahende is the most crowded race, with 6 candidates vying for the seat. Incumbent candidate and Environment and Municipal Affairs Minister Shane Thompson is running for a 3rd term. He's facing challengers Les Wright, Sharon Allen, Hilary Deneron, Josh Campbell, and Mavis Clee-Michaud. The district of Great Slave will see incumbent Katrina Knockleby defend her record. She's facing Yellowknife City Councillor and Deputy Mayor Stacey Arden-Smith, as well as Kate Reid, the president of the YWCA NWT and the Union of Northern Workers Local 40. James Lawrence is the 4th candidate, who's worked for all levels of government. In the SAW2, Housing Minister and incumbent Polly Chinna will face former MLA Daniel McNeely once again. Chinna won that race by 22 votes in 2019. Luke Carroll, CBC News, Yellowknife.
The Northwest Territories' next assembly will be inheriting a host of unfinished infrastructure projects, a shrinking population, and the closure of a diamond mine that contributes significantly to the Territory's revenue, all of which will push the Territory closer to its debt ceiling. It'll also have to deal with the fallout from this year's forest fire season and multiple evacuations. But economist Trevor Toome says the bill for this summer's disasters is unlikely to contribute to the Territory's debt. He says the federal government is taking on most of the expenses through disaster financing, and he expects private insurance will cover some of the rebuilding costs.
There can certainly be expensive disasters where the expenses are shifted off of the NWT government's own books.
Former Finance Minister Caroline Wozniak has said the NWT went through most of its surplus because of the fires, but Toome says the Territory still seems unlikely to hit its debt ceiling. He points to industries like construction and mine remediation, which he says appear to be growing. The Trudeau government continues to face a major backlash over its tax on carbon emissions. Last week, the Prime Minister announced a 3-year moratorium on the tax for home heating oil, but only 3% of households in the country rely on that in the winter. And Trudeau's critics say the rest of Canadian households also deserve a tax break. Marina von Stackelberg has that story.
Mr. Speaker, those in favour of the motion, 52. Those opposed, 0.
Saskatchewan's legislative members voting unanimously to stop collecting the carbon tax if Ottawa doesn't make an exemption for all home heating. The temperature being turned up after the federal government announced last week it would temporarily exempt homes from the carbon tax if they heat with oil, a move that mostly benefits households in Atlantic Canada.
The fact is, the vast majority, 95% of people in Ontario, do not heat their homes or businesses with oil. It's completely unfair that they still have to pay the carbon tax, so I'm urging the Prime Minister to play fair, do what's right, and eliminate the tax altogether.
The Prime Minister says no other exemptions are coming.
There will absolutely not be any other carve-outs or suspensions of the price on pollution. This is designed to phase out home heating oil the way we made a decision to phase out coal.
The Liberals say Canadians who heat with oil are often lower income and in rural locations without energy alternatives. So the temporary exemptions and rebates to switch to electric heat helps them get off that fuel.
But he's actually tearing our national unity apart.
But Conservatives accuse the Liberals of dividing the country.
Why don't we let Canadians decide? Why doesn't the Prime Minister pause the tax across the country until Canadians go to the polls so we can have a carbon tax election and Canadians can choose his plan to quadruple the tax or my plan to axe the tax.
After 3 failed elections in a row by the Conservatives, they still want to fight another election on denying climate change, on denying the costs of climate change.
And as one of the largest producers of fossil fuels, one minister says cutting Canada's pollution and not hurting pocketbooks is bound to be difficult.
This is the biggest single challenge, I would argue, that is confronting this country right now. It is going to go on for a long time. It will be tough and it will be messy and it will be hard. And this is just one of many, many days like this.
More days surely to come as provincial and territorial premiers are set to meet in Halifax next week. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Royal Canadian Legion's Poppy campaign kicked off today in Iqaluit. Nunavut Commissioner Eva Ariak received the territory's first poppy to begin the 66th year of the Poppy campaign in Nunavut.
Well, the Poppy campaign, not only in Iqaluit, but nationally and across the Commonwealth countries, represents and commemorates all those who fell, like 168,000 Canadians fell in the First World War, the Second World War, in Korea, and on United Nations peacekeeping duties in Afghanistan. So it's important that we remember that. That's the basic purpose of it.
The Legion says poppies may be available in other Nunavut communities, though it couldn't definitively say where. A Yellowknife Métis lawyer calls Buffy St. Marie a fraud. Garth Walbridge says the iconic singer-songwriter deceived millions by claiming to be Indigenous. This comes after the CBC's The Fifth Estate found documents and spoke with family members that contradict her claim to Indigenous identity. Buffy St. Marie has received awards and honors for her work advocating for Indigenous rights. Some are on her side, others are not. Walbridge says it's a very divisive and emotional issue.
People looked up to her as somebody who had been able to be recognized as a great musician and who was an advocate as an Indigenous person instead of being an advocate for Indigenous people. And so people have a lot invested. Michelle Good, yesterday in the Toronto Star, said, people today are walking through the wreckage of what we thought to be true. And I think that really kind of sums that part up quite nicely is, there's this, people, again, they have so much invested. I have friends who on social media in the past couple of days who, by the time I leave the studio, they might not be my friends anymore because I just so firmly believe that, they've been duped. And they're continuing on to accept that. Well, if you look at the birth certificate, some of it's in handwriting and some of it's typed. So maybe there's this big fraud that's been committed by the town clerk in wherever in Massachusetts and stuff. And people are nitpicking little things that, and I've said this many times. I'm a lawyer, and the CBC lawyers who had to, in some fashion, sign off on this program going to air. Jean Taille, who I know quite well, she and I both take great pride in being Métis from the Red River Settlement. Those people, those lawyers, they're not going to have stuck their neck out on the chance that there's even, 0.1% chance they're wrong. They know that they're right. And so that certainty that I have, a lot of people don't have that yet. And that's fair. I mean, people don't have to believe me. They don't have to believe the other people on the article. But the reality is, people have so much invested in wanting to believe, and they're having a hard time moving away from that.
A correction now to a story we aired last night. We told you that 3 women were in Iqaluit court, and all 3 were charged with fraud for claiming Inuit status. The story revolves around Karima Manji and her daughters Amira and Nadia Gill. All 3 are not accused of claiming Inuit status. We should have said that Karima Manji claims she adopted twins Amira and Nadia Gill from an Inuit family.
I'm Kathleen Goldhart, host of a new podcast, Crime Story. Every week we bring you a different crime, told by the storyteller who knows it best. All the ins and outs.
It was a story of murder, of exploitation of a schoolgirl. You got one witness who can't be found. You got another witness who has changed his entire story.
I remember just this feeling of complete
disbelief. Crime Story, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
You're not a millennial.
Yeah, well, Dr. Dre's not a doctor. I feel like such an imposter.
You need money to survive.
He had something to hide.
Try typing with your thumbs. What do you call it?
It's called a blackberry.
Huh.
We call them crackberries.
There's a serial killer on the loose.
2 attacks in a week.
Go on. Everybody's got something to hide.
We're not gonna be here forever, right? Makes me want to make some changes.
Your family can't take much more.
I want my children home where they should be.
You'll go to jail if you don't sign.
It is the final night of spooky season. Halloween is here, and at Avon Senior Center in Yellowknife, the doors are open for some indoor trick-or-treating. Probably a nice break when it's -5 out. Now, this event was a huge hit last year, and so this year we sent Carson Asmundson down to check it all out. He joins me now live from Avon's. I hear a lot of people in the background there, Carson. I also understand there's been some unexpected excitement already.
Yeah, a little bit earlier here, we actually had a fire alarm go off. We had a couple people in costume as firefighters. We got to see the real thing too. A little bit confusing about who's who, but we're back inside now, and the spirits are high. We got some great decorations and some music going, and lots of different candy. It's going great.
And I have to say, Carson,
yeah, I'll tell you right now though. Oops.
No, I was just going to compliment you on your excellent costume.
Sorry, go ahead.
I really, really love your costume. I feel like there's a little bit of creativity late in the day there, and I love it.
Yeah, well, I'm here right now, and I did it myself, believe it or not. I'm not kidding you. But I'll tell you, this is the place to be right now. We got indoor trick-or-treating. I'll tell you, as a veteran of trick-or-treating here in the Northwest Territories, there's nothing worse than having to wear your coat underneath your costume. You know, you got to go to school all day in the costume, then you got to put the coat on and walk around. It's just terrible. But this is the spot to be right now. We're indoors, we're warm. There's lots of different spots to hit for candy. I'll tell you, there's great diversity, too. We're talking good candy. I mean, how many times have you got rockets? Am I right? We're not talking rockets here. We're talking chocolate bars, Kit Kats, coffee crisps, the good stuff right here, right now. Now, I'm going to pass it over as a retired trick-or-treater. I'm going to pass this over to some of our younger folks, the people taking up the lead. I have Sydney and Ellie here. Ellie, what are you dressed as?
I'm a Ghostbuster.
Got a Ghostbuster here. Ellie, what's your go-to favorite Halloween candy?
I like Twix.
Twix is an excellent choice. You can't go wrong with that. That caramel, that's what really does it for me. And we have Sydney here too. Sydney, hello.
Hello.
What are you dressed up as, Sydney? Who do we have?
Stitch.
Stitch, excellent. From Lilo and Stitch, presumably?
Yeah.
Amazing. And what's your go-to Halloween candy? What's the favorite?
Probably, I have to say Smarties.
Smarties. That is a very Canadian choice of you. Now, if we're going to be trading something out this year, you know, we're going to be getting rid of the ones we don't like. What are we trading?
I'm probably gonna be ending up trading coffee crisps and Mr. Bigs and stuff like that.
Fair enough. No coffee crisps for you?
No.
That's the tough crowd there. And Sydney, what about you? Least favorite? Trading out?
Probably rockets and just like really kind of sticky candy.
Yeah, that's nothing worse than that. You know, I used to live beside a dentist and he gave me a toothbrush every single year, so I feel that. Nothing worse. Yeah, but you heard it here first, folks. The candy economy's booming. You know what's in is Twix, so things are looking good right now. And I think the evening festivities are just kicking off. I'm going to go see if I can wrangle myself up some candy. I'm going to be honest. I'm hoping to get at least a coffee crisp, contrary to some popular opinions here. And as the evening kicks off, I think this is the place to be. Yellowknife indoor trick-or-treating. Come join me right down here, right now.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Carson. I hope you get some good Twix in there. And may your bag be not be filled with rockets. That's the CBC's Carson Asmundson, live in Yellowknife.
Thank you.
Now, this next spooky story is for all the Taylor Swift fans out there. One home in Boston has decorated for Halloween with the pop star as the theme, and it's getting a lot of attention. Swifties, as Taylor's fans are called, are visiting far and wide to take in this site. They say the details are impressive. There are gold snakes to represent one of the pop star's album's reputation, and of course tombstones for all of Swift's exes. There's even one for her current boyfriend, NFL player Travis Kelce. We didn't time travel. Halloween is not over yet, but as you can see, some people are already looking towards Christmas, including these Kris Kringles who have graduated from Santa School in Brazil. They finished their training by touring a local neighborhood on a tram, shouting ho 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 classic and waving to people on the streets. And now that they have their diplomas, they can work as official Santas. Since 2018, Oceans North and the community of Coral Harbour, Nunavut have collaborated on a project to study and document the walrus population near the community. Jody Ninyoche has more on that story.
Since 2018, Oceans North have been working with the Inuit Hunters and Trappers organization, hunters, elders, and the community of Coral Harbour. The project has been documenting walrus behavior, population numbers, calving grounds, habitat, and concerns about the safety of the walrus population. South of Coral, a major concern is the passing of the ships through Hudson's Bay and Davis Strait near the small islands where the walruses live. Leonard Netzer, a hunter and guide, says work is underway to submit recommendations to Transport Canada outlining how close ships can get to the islands.
We want this recommendation on where the captains are going. Don't get too close to Ekpatutalhil. We want them to stay 15 kilometers away. We want this in the papers. They too have to stay away from Ekpatutalhil. They have to get to know this.
Netzer hopes the federal government will accept their recommendation. The document is still incomplete, but it was shared with the community for the first time last weekend. In the document, elders, hunters, and members of the community discuss how walrus is a big part of their lives. Oceans North Policy Advisor Colleen Turlow says the elders shared many memories.
Walrus stories from their youth, and they remember their first hunts when they were younger, and sort of the abundance and locations that they were harvesting, often using, these peterhead boats coming back to shore. Of course, walrus is a really important food source for the people as well as a lot of the dog teams that were in the community.
Turlow says the goal of the film is to allow the community to tell its own story about how the relationship between Inuit and walrus has changed over time. She says the short film will be an educational story for generations to come. Jody Ningyuchel, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Plenty of students take part in school projects, but there's one that has special meaning for kids at a school on Prince Edward Island. The challenge was to update signs to make them more accessible, particularly for visually impaired students. 2 students spearheaded the project. Take a look.
The signs in the school weren't the greatest because they were small, right? And it was difficult for visually impaired people to read them, which is terrible because how are they going to get around?
Multiple students with visual impairments, current and future, will be coming through this building. So it's really important to make sure that the environment is set up for everybody that comes through here.
We were supposed to make signs that were readable for anyone.
And we were kind of set free to kind of spout out ideas and what we were going to do. It's definitely nice that they trust you enough and think you're good enough, I guess, to fix a problem.
None of the kids, none of the staff refer to the rooms by number, they refer to it by the teacher's name. So that was brought up as a bit of a challenge, and these kids and the teacher, Ryan Casey, thought, you know what, I'll bet you we could do something about that.
Our way of fixing this was by making the signs movable. So instead of just having a static sign, they're like using parts in 3 parts that we can change.
So they relied heavily on accepted standards there, using the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, as a basis, and started from there, and then went above and beyond to make sure that it was as accessible as it could possibly be for all the kids here.
We needed like a bigger sign for everybody, so that you could see the room number and their name, and in Braille, so you could feel it out and know what class you're going to.
Oh, it's a totally elegant solution. What they've produced, what they've come up with, is something that, in my view, is better than anything that I've seen that's commercially available.
It's definitely nice. Like they can easily get around the school, and it's, I don't know, I feel like it would be a better experience at school, not kind of wandering around being like, where am I? So it's nice to see that everybody can get to their class easily.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north if you dare. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. We leave you with a look at the forecast for tomorrow. Have a good night.
You are constantly on the move, and so are we, making sense of the moments that matter together.
Looks like things are maybe winding down.
Asking what, why, when.
To the center of the biggest stories, meeting the people living them.
Thank you for letting us be here. What's your situation?
Making sense of our world.
How are we going to be part of this solution?
With you and for you.
Connectedness, groundedness.
I'm Adrienne Arsenault. This is The National.
Think you're a better driver when you're high? Think again. No alcohol, no drugs, no victims. A message from Mad Canada.
What Canadian animal is bigger than a school bus?
Eats tiny critters but doesn't have any teeth. Likes to swim in cold ocean waters in the summer.
And feeds milk to its baby calf.
If you guess the right whale, you're correct. These giant whales live in busy parts of the ocean, so people need to be careful when driving boats near them. To learn more about the North Atlantic right whale, visit our website at hww.ca.
Yeah, dog!
Oh, an absolute classic.
All right!
Let's go! Yeah!
This is The National.
Just remain calm. Grab the head.
You grab the head. Have you ever dealt with something like this before?
No.
It's on me now. Animal Control. Watch all episodes now.
I want my children home where they should be.
You'll go to jail if you don't sign.
There's gonna come a time you'll feel the darkness. You don't let them win.
I was homeschooled as a child. You can only be as smart as your mom. That's it.
Gross.
Okay, cool.
I love it.
Get the news you need without restrictions. Download the free CBC News app